So this Marxist march through our cultural institutions has been ongoing for almost 100 years. And Republicans and conservatives, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them, and the party in general has been unwilling to fight this fight. Look at the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution, which resulted in, the advent and the proliferation of birth control and abortion. And sure, there's always going to be Republicans who are pro-life, Republicans who push back on abortion. But the reason that the Republican Party needed a pro-life lobby is because most politicians don't want to talk about it. It's uncomfortable for them. People don't want to hear about it, they say. It doesn't pull well. A lot of Republican politicians, when they condemn abortion, they automatically pivot to late-term abortion. Because it's so heinous, it's so horrific, it's so graphic that they're like, well, surely the most people will agree with me on that. They don't want to talk about even first trimester abortion. They pivot away from that. They don't want to fight the cultural battle. They're ceding this to the Marxists that children can be commodified, that children are a burden, that human life has no dignity, no value, no worth, and isn't codified. The protection of human life isn't codified in the Constitution if that life exists in the mother's womb. I mean, think about gender here. And this is I'm talking gender before the transgender nonsense. I'm talking about the femininity that was ruined by feminists, but also masculinity. What's one of the hallmarks of masculinity? Protecting women, providing for women, fathering children. This has been completely destroyed by the left. We now have an epidemic of fatherlessness in our country that's resulting in higher crime rates and mental health issues and children not understanding how the world works because they don't have a male role model, a father figure in their life. There's more poverty, there's more drug abuse, there's more sex abuse. All of the evils that are in our culture are exacerbated when a child doesn't have a father in the home. And conservatives, a few conservatives have pushed back on this. Phyllis Schlafly pushed back on fatherlessness and on the sexual revolution. The Catholic Church has for the most part. And those who've pushed back on these cultural issues were ridiculed. They were not part of the mainstream of the Republican Party. They were always the religious right. Because our squishy Republican politicians don't want to talk about anything that's difficult for them to talk about. They just want to play politics on TV. That's how all of these institutions, whether it's education, first it was college campuses, right? They began to become liberal. And what did conservatives do? Well, they complained a little bit about it. They noticed that it got some headlines, so they wrote some articles about it. They didn't really do anything, though. They didn't try to defund especially public universities, but even private universities that get federal research dollars. They didn't try to take away federal dollars to show the universities that they meant business when they said, don't indoctrinate our nation's youth. They didn't do that because that's a cultural issue. They would have had to touch topics that, they don't want to touch that. That might be uncomfortable to talk about. And so it got into high schools and then middle schools and then primary schools. And now it's as low as preschool and kindergarten where we see, I don't have to tell you that we see all this radical sex ed, the transgenderism, the drag shows, the critical race theory, the absolute garbage that we see taught, that math is racist and that you have to have a land acknowledgement before you start. No Pledge of Allegiance. The media has been completely co-opted by Marxists. Our library system is co-opted by Marxists. The head of the American Library Association is actually a lesbian Marxist, and the reason that I'm labeling her as a lesbian Marxist is because that's what she labeled herself in a tweet where she was acknowledging her victory in the election for the president of the Library Association. She said a lesbian Marxist won. Okay, our medical industry has been co-opted by the Marxists. There is now race-based care models, meaning if you have a certain color skin, you're prioritized, and if you have a certain color skin, then you face discrimination based on the color of your skin. The medical industry also pushes transgenderism and euthanasia. Of course, they train medical providers in abortion. Hollywood is another institution that's been completely co-opted by the left. And this is one of the oldest. This is an industry that's one of the oldest that had been co-opted by the left. And except since Ronald Reagan, who's really pushed back on the communists in Hollywood? Not very many people. Maybe until DeSantis. The entertainment industry in Hollywood, think about pornography. The porn industry is one of the biggest industries in our country. Porn websites are the most visited websites in our country. Where were conservatives pushing back on this? This not only degrades women, it degrades the sexuality of anybody participating. It's bad for you. It exploits women in the production sense. These women are often sexually abused, trafficked women For the viewer, not only are you taking part in that exploitation, not only are you being unfaithful to your marriage vows, not only are you abusing the context of sex, how it's intended to be, it's bad for you mentally. It harms your mental health. It makes you more violent. It makes you crave more twisted, depraved sex acts. I mean, this is nasty stuff that spills over not just to an online presence, but into your real life. And yet, conservatives, are we just going to ignore all of this?